tip number one is what I call primary issue. Essentially, the point is know what it is that you are advocating for and stick to that point. If you're meeting with a legislator and your conversation starts to go in a different direction, like that's okay, but try and move it back to the thing that you care about. And the idea really is to remember that a focused and sharp message is more likely to be heard and remembered. Second, is this idea that to be an advocate, you don't have to agree with everything that the policymaker you are advocating with, stands for. In fact, I think if you're going to be successful as an advocate, you will at some point have to have a conversation with people whose views you disagree with on other topics. Thankfully, for those of us that care about entrepreneurship and innovation, these are pretty nonpartisan topics. There's generally broad support for them. I think the challenge is often, though, that policymakers can overlook them because entrepreneurs and small business owners aren't as vocal as some other groups when it comes to pressing for action on behalf of legislators. Third tip is to avoid arguments. Remember, relationships are really important to advocacy, and arguments have the potential to end relationships. Now, in encouraging you to avoid relationships, I'm not saying, to let false or, racist or hateful, things go unchallenged. But I do think that if you can avoid letting those disagreements escalate, into shouting matches, that's a good thing, and that will help you be more effective as an advocate. The fourth tip is it's always helpful if you as an advocate know a little bit of something about the policymaker who you are advocating with. That doesn't mean you have to know their whole biography, but before you have an interaction with them, if you spend a few minutes, kind of learning about them, what are some of the things that they care about, maybe what committees they sit on, that can help you tailor your message and be more effective when you do advocate. Tip number 5 is to remember that policymakers are people. It can be normal for advocates to feel nervous or a little self-conscious when they talk to elected officials. And I think, if you are feeling that way, remember just this fact, right? Policymakers are people too. Remember your sources of power, including that these people work for you, that you're a voter, that you have influence, that you're doing good and valuable things for your community. And that can help overcome some of those feelings that you may have. Tip number 6, this doesn't apply quite as, you won't encounter this, I think, as often when you're advocating at the state level. But it's a good point to remember is that just as an advocate, the policymaker is important for this thing that you're trying to accomplish. If they have staff who work for them, those people are just as important. They matter as much as the elected official. Elected officials rely on staff for a lot of things, including knowledge, expertise, judgment. Staff can function as gatekeepers. And so just as you want to build relationships with the person who holds office, if they have staff, it's valuable and important for you to also be building relationships with them. Number 7, again, kind of obvious, but tell the truth. And I think this is particularly important because as an advocate, you want to be known as someone who tells the truth and who can be trusted. You're educating policymakers about an issue. You want to give them the straight facts, right? Don't bend them. And if you begin to develop that kind of reputation as someone who's credible and tells the truth, that's super valuable. Tip number 8, I would say, don't let the fact that you don't know everything keep you from advocating. So if we go back to the MTC example, it's not necessary that you know all the ins and outs of every MTC program and how it functions in order to advocate for its funding. Whatever issue it is that you're advocating for, if you ever get asked a question that you don't know, say so, right? I don't know the answer to that, but I'm happy to find the answer and get back to you. And that's actually really great when you get asked a question that you don't know by a policymaker, because it gives you a really clear reason for follow-up. That follow-up, again, that's helping to build the relationship, the repeated interactions that you have with them. Tip number 9, practice, right? Just with anything, the more we practice something, the more comfortable we get, the better we get at it. And then, of course, tip number 10, be prepared with your ask. Policymakers will be expecting it, and so you shouldn't be afraid to make it.